All right, we're going live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello, everyone. Hello, heavyweights. Hello, AICI. Brandon, we have a very, very interesting and very special guest today. We're going to get to talk to Dr. Ben Goertzel, who described as cognitive scientist, artificial intelligence researcher. He's the CEO and founder of SingularityNET, one of my favorite projects, leader of the OpenCog Foundation, the AGI Society, chairman of Humanity Plus, helped popularize the term artificial general intelligence, and just a pretty cool dude. Ben, it's pretty amazing to get to speak to you after following you for so many years.
Well, thanks for having me. I mean, it should be a fun conversation, and I've appreciated what you've done for the crypto space over the years.
Okay, so first question is let's dig in. Would you say that game theory is the kind of ruling math as we proceed into like an advanced, artificially generally intelligent world? Would that be an estimation or an overestimation? Like, what's the ruling math for AI?
Well, I think there's not a consensus in the AI field on how to get to real AI that can think like a person, what I've called artificial general intelligence, and different researchers have different views on the best approach. Now, if you look at current commercial AI, which is mostly deep neural networks and then associated machine learning algorithms, I mean, what I'd say there is the ruling math is pretty much matrix algebra. It's linear algebra deployed at scale on GPUs, and we have what are called neural networks that bear a pretty loose resemblance to what goes on in the brain, which are mostly artful arrangements of matrix multiplication with a few linear operations in there. So there's not much game theory in there, although there's reinforcement learning in some cases, which is where you reward an agent for doing something good, punish it for doing something bad, and then it learns and adapts as it goes. If you have multiple reinforcement learners in a common environment, in essence, they're implicitly doing a sort of game theory to figure out how to get reward out of the interaction with each other. But there's not much of that in the AI field commercially at this point. Now, my own approach to creating general intelligence includes deep neural nets only as a small subset. So what we're doing in OpenCog, we're sort of hybridizing deep neural nets with symbolic logical reasoning, with evolutionary learning, with a few other techniques. We're combining these in a system that maintains and updates a large knowledge graph or hypergraph living on a distributed system. And actually the math I've been using there to try to simplify and formalize all this comes from a couple of directions. One is chaos theory and nonlinear dynamical systems theory, which tells you about sort of emergent dynamics in large collections of interacting elements. And then the other is some math underlying functional programming languages, which is stuff like category theory and Galois connections and so forth, which will get us very, very deep into the math universe. But I think game theory can be interesting, but the traditional assumptions of game theory don't apply so well to AI in the real world. But most of game theory has to do with perfectly rational agents. If you're dealing with either humans or practical AGI systems, you're dealing with what game theorists would call agents with bounded rationality. Like they're only smart up to a certain level, and they have weird biases to their intelligence. And yeah, the game theory of agents with bounded rationality is not well resolved yet. It probably has some implication to how things are going to go in the human world once we have started to roll out intelligent systems in reality and have to deal with them and interact with them and deal with them trying to shepherd us in a positive direction while we're trying to utilize them.
So that's interesting. So then, okay, so that takes me to kind of my next thought is, what is the kind of the current state of narrow AI? I guess where we would say we're kind of at right now, and then swarms of narrow AI, and then that transition or whatever the threshold is to artificial general intelligence, like by the way you define it. What does that change look like, and what does that timeline look like?
Yeah, I would say so. I've been working, as you know, I've been working on AI since the 1980s, before it became as popular as it is now. And obviously, the last 10 years have been unprecedentedly exciting in the AI field. I'd say from 2014 to 17 or so, we had very abrupt improvement in computer vision, going from being a sort of academic pursuit to being something that worked really well and is at the center of so many commercial products and companies and so on. Whereas since 2018, with the release of the BERT model and other transformer neural networks, we've seen a revolution in natural language processing, where we now have AIs that can generate text that doesn't always make sense, but looks like a human kind of bloviating and babbling and coming up with text. And we're seeing these two things come together with, generative image apps where you specify some text and then an AI will come up with a cool image along the lines of what you typed in. These are all quite interesting, along with other aspects of AI that haven't been as whizzy for the average consumer, like AI doing trading on financial markets, AI baked into a car's engine, helping diagnose issues, AI automating the speech processing behind a McDonald's drive-thru and whatnot. That's all advancing a lot. It's all AIs that are trained to do highly specific things based on feeding them data sets that are highly curated to prepare the AI for doing that specific task. And the $64 quadrillion question, right, is when are we going to see that 2, 3, 4 year burst of insanely rapid progress toward artificial general intelligence, toward machines that can really create and imagine and understand and self-understand like people can, and even better, right? So my friend Ray Kurzweil has hypothesized this to happen in 2029. Reasonable, I think. I mean, if we progress as we're hoping and trying with OpenCog Hyperon project, who knows? We might beat Ray's estimate by a couple years. I mean, if we hit hidden rocks that we don't foresee and the world situation goes even more awry in difficult ways, could end up being a few years later than Kurzweil predicted. But I don't personally think it's like decades and decades off. I think we're pretty close to thinking machines that can really think like people. And I think while that transition, is almost instantaneous from a historical view, like the human species has been around a while. If it takes 10, 20, 30, 50 years to get from narrow AI to AGI, that's the blink of an eye, right? But from the standpoint of running businesses and developing products and doing their jobs, there's going to be a lot of interesting opportunities with transitional systems, like with narrow AI systems that gradually are getting a little bit smarter and smarter and smarter. And, this year they're able to overtake this job function, but not that one. The next year they've overtaken that job function, but not yet this other one. So kind of surfing the year-by-year advance of AI is already hard, complicated, and confusing. Once you're into the transition from narrow AI to AGI, it's going to be even more intriguing, right? And then you could unravel what that will mean in in each vertical market. I mean, in finance and medicine and scientific discovery and education, and each of these verticals becomes its own story.
So, okay, so then I'm kind of envisioning like our approach from like swarms of AI agents into an emergent shape that looks like generally intelligent agents, or like in the same way that we're just our biology is a collection of very unique little bits and pieces that may not really care about anybody else around them, but yet the emergent shape is a human with a consciousness and all this. So I guess when do we go from an agent swarm of simple narrow AI to something that you would say, okay, that's a generally intelligent emergent shape?
Yeah, analogies to biology are important, interesting, and subtle, right? So, I mean, you refer to the human body as a swarm, but of course, the human body has a quite specific architecture, right? And each organ does its own thing. The heart does its thing, the lung does its thing, the hippocampus does its thing, the medulla oblongata does its own thing. So there's a quite specific architecture to the human body. It's not like a slime mold or something, or a bacterial colony. On the other hand, human society, in a way, has its own emergent collective intelligence, and you'd have to say human society pretty much is a self-organizing swarm, and something like a corporation self-organizes as its own form of emergent intelligence out of individuals pursuing their own goals, yet locking together to form this collective with its own emergent level goals. I think one of the things we don't yet know about how AGI is going to unfold, we don't know the extent to which it's going to be driven by, one particular AI system that's architected for general intelligence versus the extent to which it's going to emerge sort of semi-spontaneously from a whole bunch of components that are each doing their own thing, and then coordinate together, and the intelligence pops out, right? And it could be either way, and it doesn't have to be either extreme, right? You could have a network or a swarm of intelligent agents, some of which are doing more general intelligence-ish stuff, some of which are doing more narrow sorts of pattern recognition or action generation, and then they lock together into a whole sort of mainly directed by certain agents that are better at general intelligence, but relying fundamentally on all the different agents in the swarm. So with SingularityNET as a platform, we're trying to be quite open about this. And, I have my own pet theories about AGI, many of which are embodied in the OpenCog Hyperon system, but we're also open to anyone else to put any AI they come up with out on SingularityNET platform and let it loose. We have a framework called the AI DSL, the AI domain-specific language, being developed, which allows different AIs in the network to describe their requirements and properties to each other, to chat with each other, and understand whether it makes sense for them to coordinate together for a given purpose. So I think the SNET platform can be helpful almost regardless of how much of a swarm versus a single system the first AGI turns out to be. And even the OpenCog system could sort of be used in both ways. Like you could have one OpenCog system running on one server farm owned by one guy doing everything, breaking through to general intelligence. Or you could have that OpenCog system, serving as 5 or 10% of a, globally distributed network with different agents owned by different parties cooperating together to give the first general intelligence, with maybe the highest level of abstraction in that swarm provided by the OpenCog system, let's say. So there's a lot of research to be done. what's cool in AI is how fast the research is progressing now, right? I mean, you can go in a year from something being impossible to something being obvious and taken for granted. So it's sort of a magical time for AI research and development, where one by one, a lot of long-standing visions are becoming real. Not yet the vision of general intelligence, but I think that's not too far down the road.
Can you, because I know this is important to you too, the OpenCog Foundation, and can you just briefly explain that project to people and what you guys are trying to do?
Sure. So I've been working on a series of AGI systems, or would-be proto-AGI systems, since the mid-90s, really, with a similar philosophy. You take a big distributed knowledge graph or knowledge hypergraph. You have a bunch of different AI algorithms all acting on that graph and helping that graph to revise and improve itself. And you can formalize neural nets that way. You can formalize logical reasoning that way. You can formalize evolutionary learning that way. You have like ant colony AI. You have a lot of cool things you can formulate in this way. So I created a number of software systems with this general design theme. One was called WebMind, I built in Australia and then New York in the late 90s. Then one was the Novamente cognition engine. I started coding in 2001. Now, in 2008, I open sourced parts of what was first called Novamente cognition engine. We created the OpenCog project. And this was to be an open source initiative, hoping to be like the Linux of AGI, right? With the open source knowledge graph and a bunch of open AI algorithms cooperating on it. Now, obviously didn't take off as spectacularly as Linux, but we did pull together some developer community. We did a lot of
It's probably the CIA.
Is that what you
CIA got it.
So if we were to, I mean, if you wanted to go ahead, maybe while he tries to reconnect, break this down, I guess, so far. What do you think so far?
It's really interesting. And of course, we're going to escalate these questions towards like more about SingularityNET. But it's interesting, like the whole picture, like the whole kind of the world that they've been creating, which is create a platform or create a space where people can say, hey, I've been working on this here. I've been working on this here. I wrote this code here. Maybe it helps. And then in an open environment, a non kind of, siloed environment. And I think, and I've heard him speak in the past, and Charles too, that moving artificial intelligence from what is narrow now, which are like the chat bots and the deep kind of the learning engines and things like that, the simple things that we might see in daily life, like a Facebook chat, or like when you first contact, like even the crypto exchanges, it's like a little dumb AI bot that's answering questions, and it says, okay, I'm stuck. Let me transfer you to an agent, right? Like a human. So we are interacting, like most of us are interacting with narrow AI quite often. And so it's interesting to see how that's starting to, like, humans probably interact with AI much more than they interact with crypto. So like, Brandon, you and I talk a lot about like, when will crypto change the world at all? Or like, has it yet? And I would say not yet, but this is an interesting way. Wouldn't it be great if the end around, if the great app, crypto's great app, was simply a mechanism for delivering transactions and data back and forth for the AI as it approaches AGI world, right? Like that could be pretty interesting if that was like the use case for crypto. Like you throw everything else aside, and if artificial generally intelligent agents kind of move forward and move humanity forward, and the rails by which they do that is some open, decentralized, hopefully benevolent landscape, parentheses crypto, right? Parentheses digital assets. I think that would be pretty amazing. What do you think? Do you have any questions so far that have popped up on your mind?
Oh man, he knows a lot about this stuff. I think a lot of these are definitely above my wavelength of thinking. He's thinking years beyond anything that I would start to think of as far as the AI goes. I mean, and it looks like, I mean, it's uncapped. Is from what the sounds of what he's saying too. It's uncapped. It's basically only capped by what we can imagine it can come up with, because he's got the vision set forth that as long as you can think it, you can make a computer do it. And just, I mean, obviously, we all believe that. It's awesome. Man.
How about the idea that 2029 or potentially a couple years sooner?
Yeah. Oh, where he said instead of decades being, we're talking years. Yeah, I mean,
that would be.
I understand
that would be 4 years.
Yeah, that's fast.
I mean,
that's fast.
It's not that long. If you look at like the huge change just in humanity that would create. Whew.
That's the other question you want to ask is, how do you prepare for an environment where this exists? How do you prepare for a world where this exists? Is there something that we need to do as like humanity to prepare for this? Or is there something that we need to do to, I guess, ready ourselves to not necessarily compete with it, but maybe work alongside it so that we're both important in our environment? Or is one going to take out the other? I guess.
Yeah, God, there's just, and the problem is like you get a question and then the questions get bigger and bigger. So I'm trying to like scale them down, something we can chew on. But these are big questions. Like the whole change of human society, it's not like a small thing. I'm very interested in Hypercycle too. We had talked about, maybe we'll get into that when he reestablishes comms, but before we started recording, we were talking about Hypercycle. Well, he was talking about Hypercycle, and I was just dribbling, wondering, like, how do I get some of that? But so that's, for those of you that don't know, Hypercycle is a very lightweight, ostensibly like a blockchain that's going to run a lightweight blockchain derivative of Cardano. That's kind of purpose built for a lot of things. It's the scope of it's changing, but it was the original idea was that it would be kind of purpose built so that AI agents could communicate back and forth. And then it's taken on its own kind of really interesting shape. So maybe we'll get into that a little bit. Ben, did we get you back?
Yeah. I'm back. My experience was you disappeared. I was still here. So, but anyway.
Then it's definitely the CIA.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I've got a question. A lot of this is leading to something that's kind of that I've been grappling with, and that is that. And a buddy of mine, I was recently in Mexico, and when you're in Mexico and people are drinking, you go off on tangents. That's what you do in Mexico. You go off on tangents. And one of the tangents we went off on is the Turing test. So I'm very curious from you, if you re-envision the Turing test, which I think we're going to all have to do, and some kind of like formalized method for what this would be, what would it look like? And when is the world going to have to formalize like a Turing test type model to then potentially imply like rights and protections to these AI, these AGI, in an AGI world, these agents?
Yeah, I think the Turing test, as Alan Turing proposed it in the middle of the last century, was a clever idea then and is not too relevant now. I mean, the idea he proposed was basically if an AI could carry out a text chat with some human for a little while and fool them into thinking it was a human, then we should consider that it's really as intelligent as a human. And, I somewhat think we're going to be able to make AIs that can pass the Turing test, at least in some reasonable versions, without having any kind of general intelligence, just by training large language models on large corpora of human chats. But I guess different species of the Turing test will be easier to beat in that way. So, like, to fool an average random person in a 10-minute conversation that you're a human, I mean, that maybe can already be done with language model-based dialogue systems. If not, it's a few years away at most, I would say. Now, to fool me or another AI expert that you're a human in a 2-hour discussion is much, much harder, because I know what the weak points are. I know how to probe a system to try to reveal its actual lack of understanding. Turing wasn't really thinking about those nuances. I mean, his thinking was very forward-minded for the middle of the last century, right? And I think it's pretty clear now that tricking people to thinking you're human is interesting, but doesn't necessarily make you a human level general intelligence. Now, a test that I proposed in an article some years ago was the robot college student test. If you could make an AI robot that could go to MIT and walk through the halls, sit down in the classroom, take a test, get the instructions from the professor, do a group project together with other students, and graduate, I mean, then that's more compelling to me than holding a conversation and fooling someone that you're human. Like, the robot doesn't even have to fool the professors and other students that it's human. It just has to be able to carry out everything the humans do to get their degree without cheating, without any special allowances. Now, if that could be done, I mean, that's the AI is fulfilling criteria that were set up by people to try to test whether people are smart and knowledgeable and capable. And probably the AI robot that could do that could figure out how to do almost every job that human beings can do, right? Which is quite interesting. Now, it's also interesting to ask, what couldn't an AI like that do? I mean, it couldn't necessarily invent a new form of music like, say, Jimi Hendrix did. It couldn't necessarily invent a new style of painting like Vincent van Gogh did. It couldn't necessarily do, say, radical mathematical innovation like John von Neumann or Kurt Gödel, say. So that there's a level of innovation that some humans have sometime that seems to go beyond combining surface level patterns in observations. Now, most humans aren't able to perform that sort of radical innovation either, although you could say, in a sense, we all have the potential to in our minds. And it may be that every 2-year-old kid in their own way is making leaps at that level of innovation. It's just what they're coming with is new to them and not new to everybody else. But in a practical sense, there are many nuances here, and I'm not sure how important they are. I mean, we don't have a rigorous test for what it is to be conscious, and it doesn't bother us much. Like, I can't prove you're conscious, you can't prove I'm conscious. Probably neither of us is a solipsist. We each assume the other one is conscious, and we assume certain pragmatic things, like someone lying down silently, not responding, not saying anything, isn't conscious. But we don't really know they're not conscious in their mind. We don't really know that someone under anesthesia is not suffering pain and then just forgets it once the anesthetic wears off, right? So, I mean, we're willing to go through life accepting some uncertainties about some pretty fundamental things and some ambiguities, and maybe intelligence is like that also, right? So, I mean, and maybe we give robots rights and AIs rights when they're in a practical position to demand rights. I mean, that's how it worked with women's rights. That's how it worked with U.S. system giving rights to racial minorities. I mean, there was a combination of just practical culture and society evolving to a point where the most practical thing was to give these classes of people rights, and the ethics evolved along with the practicality, and that may be what happens with robots also.
So it's almost like maybe we have to wait till the robots get angry enough to demand rights to give them rights, but then on the other side of it, you know, I mean, does it or
I don't
is
know.
there like
It doesn't have to be a matter of anger, in my view, and this goes back to game theory that you mentioned initially. I mean, you can make an AI or a robot that experiences anger like people do, but I don't think we need to do that. I mean, we have our particular emotional makeup because we evolved that way. And I mean, I know I can have a bad temper at times, like most humans. And if I'm angry, I feel less pain. I can probably punch a hole in a wall or in somebody else's head, more easily if I'm angry. This is because my great grandparents needed to do that, to get food or women or fight off the rival tribe. On the other hand, the fact that I could lose my temper sometimes is probably not useful to me, right? I mean, it's probably actually bad for me in modern society. And with an AI, it doesn't have that evolutionary heritage. We don't really need to give it every element of the human emotion model. We don't need to give it anger. We don't need to give it jealousy. We don't need to give it, fear of death and selfishness and so forth. I mean, we're free to sculpt the emotion model of the AIs we create in a more positive way if we want to, which isn't to say we'll perfectly succeed at creating an AGI that's always good and loving and never has bad emotion. It's to say we shouldn't assume that the evolutionary heritage we have that sculpts our emotional landscape will necessarily be carried over to our AIs. So in terms of AGIs asking for rights, I mean, there's loads of win-win bargaining scenarios that a very intelligent machine could potentially enter into with humans in order to gain rights, right? Because people on Earth right now are conflicting and competing with each other in quite complex and sometimes very nasty and stupid ways. It's pretty easy for me to see how an AGI with even slightly greater than human general intelligence and fewer psychological problems than people could just enter into the game theoretic bargains that different human parties have with each other and do a better job than people do at bargaining to its advantage, perhaps with everybody's good in mind. This is the AI diplomat and politician rather than the AI warrior, basically.
So in the same way that like the emergent shape, like you mentioned, of a corporation can look a lot like a psychopath or at least psychopathology in the kind of cold, lean efficiency of that business model, right? Like everything for profits, repay the shareholders and push the edge of the law, right? Like would an emotionless AGI be much more efficient than a emotionful AGI?
I don't think that a fully emotionless AGI is even a possibility if you're talking about an AI that's an autonomous agent and is controlling, say, a physical or virtual body trying to do things in the world. I mean, I think if you have an AI that's not an agent and is just like an oracle answering questions or just a data mining system or something, right? I think in that case, you can have an AGI that's doesn't have any emotion. But if you have an AGI that's, say, controlling a robot body moving around, or an avatar in a virtual world, or even just being like a internet dialogue agent that's going around reading different things on the internet, talking to different people for different purposes, I think being an autonomous agent pursuing goals in a shared environment with other intelligences, I think this naturally leads a system to have sort of whole system responses to, the satisfaction of achieving a goal, the frustration of not achieving a goal, the irritation at some other agent for blocking you from achieving your goal. So I think emotion at some level is just imminent in being an autonomous agent in a shared world with other social beings. On the other hand, some people are more intensely emotion governed than others, and some folks start out intensely emotion governed and then learn to master their emotions. I would think that an AI could be designed for a level of emotional maturity that many people can only get to after years or decades of work on themselves, right? And an AI could be designed so that when it has an emotional reaction, it witnesses and acknowledges that emotional reaction and understands it for what it is, and doesn't cling to it, and doesn't sort of instinctively react just based on that emotional reaction. So I think it's not about the AI not having emotion. It's about the AI having a mature and rational approach to managing its emotions, which I think is hard for most of us humans and doesn't have to be as hard for an AI.
Okay, let me pivot on. So on that note, let's pivot into kind of financial markets just for a second.
Yeah.
And not to dissect anything specific.
On the note of becoming overwhelmed with stupid emotions and being very reactive, which is very, very, very pertinent to the behavior of most retail investors, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. So wouldn't an age? So I guess in a future where humans interact with hopefully kind and benevolent, generally intelligent agents and machines, doesn't that also obviate humans participating in markets? I mean, wouldn't an AGI system or you can't compete. Joe
No,
Sixpack.
I mean humans are almost obviated from competing in many large global financial markets already, right? I mean, it's way over 90% program trading. I mean, on like global currency futures or commodity futures or U.S. equities or something, right? I mean, these are already mostly just programs out competing programs, and the main function of retail investors is just increase the profit margins of the program. So I mean, I'd say we're almost already there in most major markets, even without general intelligence, just with machine learning, statistics, and quant finance. I mean, I think crypto markets, like say commodity markets in Mongolia or Brazil or somewhere, these are examples of markets which may still have some of the sorts of inefficiencies that the human mind is better at getting than AI agents, because the history is kind of crazy to feed to AIs as training data. There's frequent regime changes and so forth. So I think in mature markets we're already there, and we're rapidly getting there, even in say crypto markets and the emerging commodity markets. I mean, with Singularity DAO and with a new project Cogito in the SingularityNET ecosystem, we're playing a bunch with AI tools for crypto market prediction and analytics, and AI does something there, even though I think in these primitive markets there's still more role for humans than in the larger, more liquid and more mature markets. So yeah, I mean, humans pretty much already their main role in financial markets is to own the AI systems and statistical arbitrage systems and such that are making the actual trading decisions.
So then let me add one more layer to that. So let's move forward to 2033. All the arbitrage no longer exists for Joe Sixpack because in markets, the robots would have, the agents would have seen that as it's happening, and we can't be awake 24/7. So either we're a participant in owning a system like that, or I think the world looks a lot different. And I just think individual trading is done, gone, see you later, bye. I do think investment exists because you could but then again, we might be, out invested by the robots. So I do see more Singularity DAO.
We'll definitely be out invested by the robot, right? So I mean, in Singularity DAO, we've been looking closer to trading than investing, but in Cogito, which is a new project, we're looking at making these new financial instruments called tracer coins, which are like stable coins, but instead of tracking fiat, you're tracking a synthetic index. So there's the G coin, which tries to pin its value to an index of environmental progress on solving climate change, which is very stable year on year. It's stabler than a fiat currency, for better or worse, right? Then there's the X coin, which uses algorithmic stabilization driven by AI to track an index of technological progress. So we make a synthetic index that tracks how fast are we going toward the singularity, how fast are processors, how small are motors, how cheap is it to sequence DNA. Make this synthetic index of progress towards singularity, then you make a cryptographic token that roughly tracks this index of progress toward the singularity driven by AI-based algorithmic stabilization. So what underlies this X coin is basically investment strategies into financial instruments that will grow along with the progress toward the singularity. But I mean, AI can do this better than a human can. I mean, the NASDAQ maintains what it calls a singularity index. It's cool. It's a bunch of tech stocks drawn from the Russell 2000 and so forth. But I mean, it's not picking these stocks as cleverly as an AI can after reading all the research papers about the technologies being developed by these companies and comparing the price and volume patterns of these companies to those of other financial instruments on different markets throughout history. I mean, I think at the present time, there's still plenty of niches where human insight can play a special role, but these niches are getting fewer and weirder each year, right? So like if I was trying to manage an AI portfolio, I think right now I could pick which AI companies are going to do well better than an AI could. But that's because I'm an expert in that one particular area, right? And I've been in that area for forever. Now, on the other hand, if you're trying to overall pick, which financial instruments are going to track progress toward the singularity, AI can just encompass that scope better than any one single human mind can, even though it's fundamentally more investing-ish than trading-ish. But the thing is, in financial markets, as in most other domains, between here and the singularity, there's going to be an ever-changing array of niches where humans still have an advantage, particularly humans who can leverage the best available AI tools. So I mean, even though quantitative tools are taking over more and more of the finance world year by year, it's not like there's no niches where human intuition will outperform. It's just those niches may change year on year, which means for a human to keep up, they've got to be a very adaptive human.
So what you're saying is long SingularityNET, and you're good.
Well, yeah, that's one thing. we've got a whole SingularityNet ecosystem. We got a bunch of projects in the ecosystem. But indeed, if you're an AGIX token holder, you get first in line for airdrops from various ecosystem projects also. Yeah, I think obviously SingularityNet is a good project. There's other good projects out there, and there's not much doubt that AI is eating the world, right? I mean, AI is going to take over more and more segments of the economy, and yeah, a simple thing to do is just put your wealth in the most advanced possible AI projects out there, and sit and wait while AI takes over the world. Of course, if you have in-depth knowledge to look at each particular project, then you may be able to do a little better.
So in my index, I have a disproportionate amount of AGIX.
As you're a wise man, yeah. Right.
And I had heard some comments, and I'm either someone paraphrased you or someone paraphrased someone paraphrasing you, but something to the effect of that, and I agree with this, that the SingularityNet total market cap could eventually it kind of engorge so much so that it would be even comparable to like a Cardano or another like kind of prominent layer.
I think it could be much. Yeah, if you look at SingularityNet and Hypercycle together, this could be much larger than the whole rest of the blockchain ecosystem. Actually, I mean, because right now, blockchain has developed pretty wonderfully from a technology point of view, but not as impressive from a use case standpoint, right? I mean, the biggest excuse we have for a use case is DeFi, which is really just, converting one token to another token to another token to another token. There's not that there's anything wrong with that can be used to help fuel development in innovative projects like we're doing with SingDAO and Cogito, right? But we haven't yet seen the big, massive, real-world use case for blockchain. And if I'm right that AI can be that, then that could massively expand the scope of the whole blockchain world. So I mean, look at how big AI is going to become, basically taking over the world economy. Now, suppose 10% of the AI in the world is running on decentralized networks rather than in centralized networks. And, suppose that 30% of that is SingularityNet, just to be conservative, right? So then you're looking at like 3% of the global AI economy running on SingularityNet. But I mean, what if say, a third of the global economy is AI, right? So then you're looking at like 1% or so of the world economy is running through SingularityNet, and that's huge. And I've sort of used conservative numbers there from a certain standpoint, right? You could imagine it. You could imagine it being bigger. You could imagine that decentralized AI just works much better than centralized AI, in the same way that cloud computing now works better than on-site computing, right? So if decentralized AI takes over half or 3/4 of the AI world, and SingularityNet is 80% of that, right? All of a sudden, we're like, 20-30% of the global economy is running through SingularityNet, right? And I mean, I think it's highly possible, just as, when Linus Torvalds was hacking the first lines of code of Linux, it would have seemed weird to think that 70% of the internet could run on Linux, and the majority of the world's mobile phone ecosystem was running on Linux. But that's exactly what happened, right? And when ARPA, U.S. Military Research Agency, launched the internet, it would have seemed fanciful to think that such a substantial percent of the world economy will be running on these protocols like TCP/IP that were being rolled out then, right? So you can have some things like that start out in a little corner, but they actually turn out to be an infrastructure underlying everything, and that's really what we're after with SingularityNet. And yet, in terms of AGIX token, I mean, if this happens, then what you have is AGIX token is the lifeblood of the intelligent global brain, right? And then Hypercycle, which you briefly mentioned earlier here, I mean, this is a lower layer, right? So we're in the middle of porting SingularityNet onto Cardano, and Cardano is a big improvement over Ethereum in speed, scale, and security, but low cost. But we're developing Hypercycle as a Cardano sidechain. It gets rid of the ledger. There's no replicated ledger. There's no centralized ledger. It can validate a smart contract based on only 3 or 4 nodes rather than needing every node in the network to validate the smart contract, right? So with Hypercycle, which will have its own token, you're then getting tremendously more scale and speed in the blockchain plumbing layer underneath SingularityNet. So I think this is another token and another tokenomic framework that I think could viably grow to underpinning like a large percent of the world economy, which, it sounds crazy, but you could go through one example after another. I mean, when Jeff Bezos was first selling books online, he was probably the only one who saw that what he was doing would grow into something eating a significant chunk of the world economy. But it unfolded exactly that way because he had the vision before everybody else did.
I mean, I don't think it's fanciful at all and I've been trying to like scream from the top of every high surface I can. You get a little bit of blowback because people are uncomfortable with an idea where we cede a lot of our compute to AGI. For me, it makes a lot of sense and pushes us towards like you say, a kinder, more benevolent future. Okay, SingularityNet. If you were going to explain it to my strung out on meth grandmother, how would you explain SingularityNet to someone that may not have a deep understanding of AI, but how would you explain the kind of marketplace you're creating? And then the idea that owning SingularityNet is kind of a VIP ticket to all of these other vertical companies that you guys launch.
Yes. So SingularityNet is, from a software standpoint, it's sort of a middleware layer, you would call it, which maybe makes it sound less exciting than it is, right? Because you've got blockchains down here like a Cardano and a Hypercycle and Ethereum, and then you've got AI applications that do specific things to meet specific market needs for B2B or B2C models. What SingularityNet does is it provides a middleware layer that lets a bunch of different AI applications communicate with each other, outsource work to each other, talk to each other, save their state, access data sets, and so forth, but running in a purely decentralized way on top of an underlying blockchain. So SingularityNet, it's basically an infrastructure for the internet of AIs. It lets a whole bunch of different AI agents cooperate and coordinate together to deliver AI services together. And you need a layer like that because to build your AI directly on an underlying blockchain is just a lot of work in each case. You'll be doing a lot of repeated work in putting each AI application directly on the blockchain, where SingularityNet abstracts out that repeated work. So I mean, we have some demo applications running on SingularityNet marketplace now that you can see on the website, but we're actually making a bunch more use back end of the platform and protocol besides the demos that are on the website. So it's a funny thing to talk about, because in a way it's like in the middle of a bunch of other technical plumbing, right? Which is a sort of obscure and the computer sciencey thing. On the other hand, that's how the modern internet infrastructure works, right? You get a bunch of different layers. You get a complex tech stack, and they're all working together to develop functionality. So one thing we've been doing in SingularityNET ecosystem in the last year or so is focusing on developing vertical market specific products. So say there's some music stuff. There's a song splitter app that helps you divide up a song into multiple tracks, and then we're doing AI for generating new music, for making AIs and robots sing. These are all in applications that run on SingularityNET. There's the Rejuve app, which answers questions about your health and your progress toward longevity, and uses a Bayesian network and neural net doing inference that runs on SingularityNET platform. That's in beta now, should roll out December or January out of beta. There's Singularity DAO, which is running machine learning models for crypto market analytics on the platform. Where we're launching an online magazine called Mindplex that automatically summarizes and customizes news using AI running on SingularityNET platform. And I mentioned Cogito, which is making tracer coins, a new type of crypto-based financial instrument that's uncorrelated to either Bitcoin or fiat, which again, the AI providing the stabilization underlying Cogito's tracer coins runs on the platform. So, my original thought had been, we'll launch this agent system, this middleware layer on top of Ethereum. Ethereum will get better and better, then a lot of people will appear to build cool stuff on the platform. So now it's ended up we're doing more of it ourselves. Like Ethereum didn't get better and better fast enough. We switched to Cardano. Now we're making Cardano better with Hypercycle. On the other hand, not enough people appeared to build the applications we need on top of the platform. So we're just spinning off a bunch of vertical market specific projects ourselves that are building on top of the platform to get the ball rolling. And we're doing something called deep funding, where we give AGIX token grants to entrepreneurs in the ecosystem who are building their own stuff on top of the platform. So we're trying to sort of both build our own applications by creating new companies and spinning them off, and to give seed funding to entrepreneurs building on top of the platform. Now, in the end, where that has to lead to is millions of AI entrepreneurs building stuff on the platform themselves. But what we're doing now is trying to seed that activity by being a bit more hands-on. So we're sort of acting on all different layers of the tech stack now.
So that's interesting. So, and my point of view has always been why I am so personally excited about AGIX is SingularityNet is it gets me access to all of this other stuff. And in some cases, depending on where you live, it's the only way to get access. I don't think everyone realizes that token sales, token distributions on the sales side, on the initial token sales, initial coin offering, it's not so easy because a lot of jurisdictions have very specific rules, like you can't do this, you can't do that. California is different from Texas, different from New York, and that's just here in the United States. And then you have, all these rules abroad. Whereas, at least in my opinion, you own the AGIX token, and you guys have been very kind in doing these distributions of, I think is it like 5% of the tokens for these new projects get distributed?
So for any project which is incubated in SingularityNET Foundation and then sort of spun out as its own project with its own token, we distribute 5% of the tokens to the SingularityNET, the AGIX holding community. And we didn't have an obligation to do that, but we want to keep the community engaged in all these new projects. Also, because we're very aware that a key ingredient to the success not only of the core platform but of the ecosystem projects. I mean, the community, the active participant of the community, of folks like yourself and everyone watching us talk now. I mean, this is critical to making our vision come true. I mean, we'll need to have a much bigger community ultimately to realize all of our goals. But the community we have now is really one of our assets in growing that bigger community.
It's pretty interesting to me to see also the companies that you guys are seeding. That also is very telling, at least to me, of where I think your head's at, right? Because I feel like if it gets past Dr. Goertzel's like threshold and the decision is made, hey, let's launch this, then there's something interesting about that me as a layman should pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to solve all the big problems facing the human species in a democratic and decentralized way, right? I mean, that's all it is. I mean, Rejuve is like, I'm almost 56 years old. I don't want to die. I want to live forever. I mean, why not? And we're at a time when, you know, machine learning and AI science and blockchain can really help with longevity research. So it's both a financial growth area and it's a, you know, very important thing to do. I mean, with Mindplex, I mean, it's not so much that the world needs another futurist media news outlet. It's that the media world, both traditional and social media, is doing a terrible job at reputation management, and it's doing a terrible job at getting creators paid. The creator economy doesn't work, right? So showing how you can use an AI-powered reputation system and AI content creation tools to make an actual functional little lobe within the media ecosystem. I mean, I think that's important because in the end, media is what shapes so much of the global brain of humanity, which is what is in turn shaping the brains of the AGIs that we create, right? And with the Cogito, as I mentioned, it just, you know, it seemed pathetic to me. The only thing the crypto ecosystem can come up with is financial instruments that are insanely volatile or ones that track fiat. I mean, the point was supposed to be to transcend fiat, not to track fiat. The fact that the only way we can avoid insane volatility is to track fiat is ridiculous and unnecessary, right? So the motive behind Cogito is like, let's make tokens that are stable in some way other than tracking fiat, and let's make tokens that by design don't just correlate to the stock market and the US dollar exchange rate, right? And it's perfectly possible to do. So, I mean, I think it's entirely possible that Cogito's tracer coins can do what Facebook's DM, you know, tried and failed to do, and become a, you know, global payment token that's you know, the financial lifeblood of a whole bunch of the world economy, even outside the AI domain, because crypto fundamentally should be a better way to do payment than fiat currency. And CBDCs don't solve everything because, you know, most countries in the world don't want to accept some other country's CBDC as in effect the main way of payment within their country. You need something that isn't tied to a specific country, and you need something that isn't insanely volatile. Then that thing can be adopted as a global payment solution, even beyond the AI sphere. And I think Cogito's tracer coins can do that, leveraging AI algorithmic stabilization running on SingularityNET platform, right? So I mean, I think that the choice of what projects to incubate and spin off is like, is there a problem to solve that's incredibly critical to the future of sentient life on Earth and in our part of the universe? And can we solve that in a way that also has a viable business model that can make money associated with it, right? And if things are in those intersections, it grabs my heart as something to incubate. Now, actually, we made a decision this year to pretty much stop incubating new projects within SingularityNET and put everything into deep funding instead. So we have this batch of projects we've incubated internally, and this was something valuable to do in 2020, 2021, 22. We're going to spin these out. We're going to make sure that they flourish and grow, and hopefully, play huge, maybe dominant roles in their corresponding vertical markets. But going forward, we want to decentralize further. Instead of incubating projects within SingularityNET Foundation, we're using deep funding, which is a stream of tokens, to give grants to community members who are launching projects that hopefully solve very important problems associated with viable business models, leveraging SingularityNET AI. And, in that way, we can do even more cool things that we can do by incubating projects within the SingularityNET Foundation.
And that's all based on the AGIX token again.
It is all based on the AGIX token. Well, let me be clear. So for all the projects SingularityNET is incubating, the AI that they utilize will be AI running on SingularityNET form and will therefore use AGIX token. The projects will have their own tokens for others, like Rejuve uses the Rejuve token to reward people for contributing medical data to a database, to decentralized medical database. On the other hand, the AI that crunches that decentralized medical database runs on SingularityNET platform and uses AGIX token. Now, deep funding is grants given in AGIX token to entrepreneurs. Some portion of 25% of those grants must be used to pay for AI servicing on SingularityNET platform. Now, the deep funded projects are autonomous. Their creators can run them however they want to, but they're initially building them in a way that uses SingularityNET platform for AI, and certainly they have incentive to keep doing that so as to get the support of the SingularityNET ecosystem.
So, and I feel like I have a good grasp. For me, it just all roads lead to SingularityNET. Like that's the top of the hill, and that's your VIP ticket. So let's get away from I've vampired so much of your time. The last question I want to ask you has nothing to do with money, I don't think. And that is, what is Dr. Ben Goertzel this moment most excited about in your entire life? Like, what excites you right now, this second?
So in the SingularityNET sphere, the thing I'm plunging into during the next week actually is OpenCog Hyperon project, where Matt Icklay, who's our chief scientist, is coming to visit me, hang out with me at my house for a week, and we're plunging specifically into a project to use OpenCog Hyperon to control these sort of tribes of little virtual guys living in the virtual world, cooperating together to solve problems. So we're actually working with Minecraft now. So we have these little AI tribe members raising little kids in Minecraft and trying to build stuff together. And we're sort of working out exactly how does the reasoning and learning work here. And obviously, this is not because we care so much about Minecraft. It's a sort of prototype domain aimed at getting the sort of embodied learning and reasoning right. All this AI runs on SingularityNET platform, and once it gets smarter and smarter, can be leveraged behind AI inside all the different products on the ecosystem. But I'm excited right now about spending the next week plunging deep into the bowels of the AI, because I spent a lot of September and October traveling around, going to conferences and sort of networking again, which I hadn't done for a long time because of COVID. So now a couple months of that was good. Now I'm interested to plunge back into the AGI R&D for a bit.
Ben, I want to thank you so much, one, for your time, but just for the last many decades of your kind of contribution towards pushing humanity forward, even when I feel like there's a lot of blowback from uncomfortable humans at what, some of the ramifications of what you and the people at Google and just kind of all of the AI projects all around are doing. But it's incredibly important. And I'm glad you're one of the few people that is very accessible, and you're willing to kind of communicate in non-secret code to regular people. I think that's incredibly important. And, just kind of continue. And I know I will continue to wave the flag, wave the AGIX flag. So,
well, thanks a lot, Nick. No, I really appreciate your support, and I appreciate the way you sort of simplify things in a very direct and compact way. Because when you see the whole picture so clearly, it's sometimes hard to boil it down to a very simple point. And I think you're quite good at doing that. So you're making a big contribution to this whole quest for benevolent, decentralized AGI as well.
My last ask, and then we'll wrap it up. I would ask, when you guys launch your new verticals, I would love to talk to the people at those projects like you and I did. I'd love to kind of expose their ideas and their thoughts.
That's great. That's great. They'd be happy to talk to you. We got a whole bunch of excited young CEOs running each of these projects. So it should and I think those would be conversations.
Well, guys and gals and pronouns undisclosed, this was a discussion with Dr. Ben Goertzel. This was a lot of fun. We're going to do more just like this, and we will see you on the next one.
Thanks a lot, Nick.
Bam.